Good evening. I hope everybody's doing okay this evening. Thanks for coming to our Vision Zero public engagement session for the northern half of Savannah. We're kind of on limited time, so I don't want to take a lot of time speaking. I want to get right to the exercise and the presentation so we can start diving into these maps. But I'm going to give Assistant City Manager Heath Lloyd a moment to speak, and then we'll bring on the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Hey, so good afternoon, everybody. I hope y'all are doing okay. I am Heath Lloyd, the Assistant City Manager. I just wanted to take an opportunity to do a couple of things tonight. The first one, I have to introduce the elected official that's here. We do have Alderman Nick Palumbo in the house tonight. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to say really quickly how big a supporter he is of Vision Zero. He has been instrumental in moving this initiative, and I stand here tonight on the cusp of moving it forward yet another step, but it would not be possible without the tremendous support of Alderman Palumbo. So I want to thank you for your passion. I want to thank you for your effort, and most importantly, for all the support. So thank you, Alderman. The second thing I want to do is I want to thank the people that are here tonight. This is a very important initiative, and I think this initiative speaks volumes to me because it's the entire city. When we talk about Vision Zero, we talk about an initiative where we don't want fatalities on our streets. And when I say our streets, I mean it. These are our roadways. Every citizen, whether you're a driver, a pedestrian, riding a bicycle, and most of us, including me, have been one or the other at different times, right? Sometimes you're in a car, great. Sometimes you're the pedestrian, or maybe you're riding a bike. And the importance of this program that we're getting ready to talk about is no matter which place you find yourself, if you're in the city of Savannah, we want to make sure that you're safe. And so I really appreciate the fact that we have citizens here that are participating because, ladies and gentlemen, I get the opportunity to be the assistant city manager, but these are your roadways. Yeah, I'm responsible for resurfacing them. Yeah, I'm responsible, he is, for making sure they're travelable, right? But the truth of the matter is these are your roadways. So we have a tremendous group of professionals here tonight, but you, the citizens, the residents that are going to participate in this process, that's the most important piece because these are your roadways. And when we talk about Vision Zero, sure, it's an initiative driven by the city, but it's an initiative that's really here to help our residents. And so I appreciate you all for being here tonight, and I truly appreciate you for participating in the process. These processes in city government, they don't work without your participation. And by you showing up here tonight speaks volumes about how you feel about your community and how you feel about our effort to make sure that your streets are safe. So thank you on behalf of the city manager's office for participating tonight, and most importantly, have a little fun. Certainly take this all in, this interactive workshop, speak your voice, make sure your voice is heard, but then try to engage as much as you can. That's what this is. This is about engagement. And so again, thank everybody for being here tonight. Looking forward to hanging around a little bit, learning a little bit more from Rick over here. I learn every time I talk to him. I'm going to learn a little bit more tonight, but I truly appreciate you guys being here, and thank y'all so much for just giving me the opportunity.
So if I didn't mention, I'm Steve Henry. I'm the Director for Transportation for the City of Savannah. So sorry I failed to mention that, but I want to introduce Jason King with Dover Coal. He's going to run through the presentation for us.
So welcome, thank you for coming. Our firm, Dover Coal & Partners, is working with Hall Planning and Engineering. We are two firms, consultancies that get to work around the country, around the world. And we do a variety of projects, but the Vision Zero work is one of my favorites because this really does have a concrete result. It does help people and save lives. So let me tell you a little bit about Vision Zero and then tell you about a couple of success stories. And then my primary job is to explain the exercises that we're all going to be engaged in. So in just about 15 minutes is the fun part. You're going to be able to be working on those maps and we'll have an interactive conversation. This is the fourth of 4 engagement sessions, And just counting the 30 or so people that we have tonight, we've had over 100 people show up, 100 different people to each one of the, in total, to the events, which is pretty good. For a city of 150,000, for a project which is focused on transportation, that's a really good turnout. You are going to represent a lot of people. With your dots and with your markers and with the conversations you're going to have, you're speaking for a lot. It's a huge responsibility. Making places safer is the most responsible thing that a city can do. The City Council approved Vision Zero resolution in February of last year, and the goal is to eliminate traffic deaths within city limits by 2027, which isn't a lot of time. It's an ambitious schedule. There's an action plan, and you see that picture there, and that's available online. And that talks about the goals and objectives and the policies of Vision Zero. There's a lot more information in there than we're going to get to tonight, if you're interested in finding out more. Now, every year between 2013 and 2020, every single year in that 7-year period, Savannah saw an average of 18 traffic-related deaths and 146 serious life-changing injuries. And that's not good. That is actually a high number. That's comparable to a city maybe 4 times the size of Savannah. So it's an epidemic. It's an acute problem here for a lot of different reasons that we'll discuss. So now let's talk about what you have in front of you. There are maps which show these, which are created by John in the traffic department. And these maps show pedestrian and cyclist and car fatalities. So the first thing that you want to do in the exercise is sort of familiarize yourself with the more dangerous parts of the city. Those are the areas where we have to focus our attention. What you'll also be doing is you'll be looking at these maps in terms of, what's your neighborhood? Each table has 2 large maps. There's the downtown, because everyone has the downtown in common, and then there's also the rest of the city from west to east. And then there's a chance that you're not sitting at the right table. There's a chance that the map in front of you is not the area that you know. And feel free, when we move into the interactive exercises, to move to where it makes more sense. There's a sheet on the table, and at the front, the sheet describes the Vision Zero program in more depth. There is the red and green dot exercise, which is over here. This is a way of looking at so many different tools for Vision Zero. Over 40 just come to us off the top of our head. And the red and green dot exercise is just you saying what's more appropriate and what's less appropriate. Unrelated to geography, without placing these in specific spots, what's your gut reaction to some of these tools? And it's kind of interesting, right? You see the red and green dots accumulating. At the table, you also have these sticker sheets. So of the 40 or so tools, there are 15 here that are the most common, the easiest to understand, and these are really the ones that rely on local knowledge to implement. So these are sticker sheets, and we've got a lot of them. So very soon you're going to be placing these stickers to talk about the different programs. And the programs, the elements of safer design, there's also a sheet like this on each table, and it describes generally what these are. But the most important part is to not let the stickers get in the way of the conversation. At each table will be a facilitator, either a city employee working on traffic and planning, or one of our consultant team. And then that's just markers, easy, cheap Crayola markers, just to record your ideas. So if it gets complicated with the stickers, don't feel you're committed to it. Success is possible. The program's been around, Vision Zero, for maybe about 20 years, and you can look around the world, and certain cities have seen a large decrease in deaths and in fatalities. And in the United States, which has implemented the program roughly in the last 5 to 10 years, they're starting to see successes. Last week we were touring Jersey City, where they achieved 0 fatalities on their roadway, and they had 40 per year, which is nearly double what Savannah has. New York City, which is really just a circus of people and cars and bikes and motor scooters, has seen huge reductions in their issues. There are multiple communities in California that have had successes. We worked in places like El Paso, Texas. So let's say you have an idea for a bike lane, a dedicated, protected bike lane. In El Paso, Texas, doing an exercise like this, so did someone else on Stanton Street. And with a green marker, they drew it. And that project moved to the front of the transportation and mobility list in El Paso. Because Vision Zero means once we do this plan, the city is able to access funding, compete for federal and state funding they wouldn't have otherwise. So while it was the case that people have been talking about the Stanton Street cycle track for a long time, participation in a program like this and inclusion in the report meant that it had funding for the first time. So this protected bike lane, for instance, pedestrian and cyclist fatalities on the corridor dropped from 3 during 2015 to 2018, 1 per year to 0. And last time I checked, it just stayed 0. Serious injuries are down along all the parallel corridors by 63%, which is pretty dramatic, which means people used to be on their bikes all around, and then the bike lane came in, and then they stayed on the bike lane, and it took them off of more dangerous areas. So the bike lane, that might be something that comes out of it. The city of Savannah has already lowered its speeds on residential streets down to 25 miles an hour. We worked in a community, Coral Gables, Florida, that did the same. And in that community, severe injuries due to crashes were down 27%. Even though the population is going up, the number of crashes is going down. Often these Vision Zero projects have a dashboard where the public can watch the results, and you can look to see what's going on and what are the problem areas and where areas are seeing success. Now, another part of this is transit. In Culver City, California, our job was to take a spot where buses and bikes and cyclists and pedestrians all converged and to make it a lot safer. And so this sort of thing involved a lot of dots. There's asphalt, art, and protected bike lanes. Trees were added. There's crosswalks of multiple kinds. There's curb extensions. All of this was added, and what this ended up resulting in that one spot was a 52% increase in bus ridership, 32% increase in cycling activity, and an 18% increase in pedestrian activity. You build a place that's safe, comfortable, and interesting for pedestrians, cyclists, and transit users, and they will use it much more. Now, there's another part to this. It's mapping the entire city. So Rick, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? So there's specific interventions that we're going to be working on. But then there's also very large, broad brush designations of areas, and Rick's going to talk about how that helps the city.
Thank you, Jason. While in New York City, Jason and Pam took their children to see Harry Potter on Broadway.
Yeah.
Good parents, because I know the kids enjoyed it, right? You'll see on some of these maps some color, some green, some tan color, and then some light blue. Those areas represent what we call context classifications. Context is what's happening with the land use development pattern outside the right-of-way. You can do a lot on a transportation facility just within the right-of-way, but you can only change a certain amount of its character and its safety and its flow by working inside the right-of-way. What happens outside the right-of-way? How close the buildings are to the street, how many buildings there are next to the street, whether you're out in the rural area or whether you're in the downtown core, historic district. So that context needs to be looked at very carefully, and it's being looked at by cities all over the country right now. We have been doing our city streets and rural county streets by context for 60 years, but we only had 2 context areas, rural and suburban. Rural and suburban. So when all of us engineers opened up our books to see, well, how should we design this street? We said, well, It looks pretty rural to me, Sam. Okay, go over to the rural section and start designing. Or you're in the suburban section, start designing it like a suburban street. But we did not have the fine-grained level of context of city center and urban walkable. So city center, you're all familiar with. And then this urban walkable is where all the streets are in a grid and you're still comfortable walking as a pedestrian, shade trees, buildings close. And then you get out into the suburban area where the cars kind of begin to dominate. And the lights go from nice street lights to Cobra headlights way up above. And everything speeds up and moves back. And that's moving to the suburban pattern. So we're trying to reintroduce these classic traditional patterns of land development, say where they are, and if you don't like the designation of context that you get, then you can have city government say, we want to change this from green to tan. We want this area to also be more walkable and more urban-like and slower speeds and narrower right-of-ways, narrower lanes and everything. So this is a method by looking at the surrounding land pattern and then designing the land development and the street design based on the context where you are. And you cannot design a street until you know where you are. So that's a key thing we're going by now. I pushed the down button. That's the wrong one, right? There we go. This is an example of doing just what I was talking about. This is Panama City, Florida. Not the beach, but the mainland Panama City where the working people are. And the Air Force Base is down to the right. They got hit by Hurricane Michael very badly, as you all know, Category 5. And Dover Coal came in and developed planning procedures, and we developed street designs for them to use to rebuild. So here's the downtown. Here's the surrounding walkable neighborhoods area. This is all suburban, and it's going to stay suburban because that's what the city council adopted in their ordinance for how these context areas are set up. So you can do the same thing and begin to address the street patterns and the mobility plans according to the kind of character you have outside the right-of-way and around the roadway system. So that's what's coming. That's kind of a far edge of what we're talking about immediately on this project of getting a focus on Vision Zero.
So we talked about the red and green dot exercises. Make sure you do that before you leave. I'm just going to talk about a couple of the different tools that we have at our disposal. One, the controversial roundabout, right? The first time you come across a roundabout, it's scary and confusing, but eventually you come to understand that what the roundabout does is it avoids the head-on collisions. If you have an intersection with two lights, and one person runs that light, then you're likely to have a high-speed head-on collision, and those are the most fatal traffic accidents. So what the roundabout does is it slows everyone down. And once the speeds are very slow, in a large roundabout on a large road or a small pedestrian scale roundabout in a neighborhood, once the cars are moving slowly, it can actually help traffic because no one's ever stopped at the red light. It's a continuous flow, and it also makes things more safe. So you'll see the yellow roundabout sticker, okay? So that as a safety precaution. When it comes to the walking areas, there's crosswalks. This city has a lot of crosswalks. There's also a lot of crosswalks that are faded or disappeared, right? And there's also spots where you push the button in order to cross the road, but there is no crosswalk. So think about that. On your walk, where are there crosswalks and where are there not? Where are crosswalks been lost? One of the issues is that if you just apply paint, the white paint will fade off in time. And what we're trying to do through this process and others is to apply a kind of thermoplastic, which stays, and lasts longer. So think about crosswalks. You have stickers that will mark crosswalks. Pedestrian paddle signs and pedestrian activated flashing beacons. We wouldn't use those on every intersection, but on the intersections that you know people use, on dangerous intersections, these things let the cars know that people are crossing. And there's stories about how the first time the pedestrian paddle sign is installed, it's beaten and battened and knocked down and it disappears. But when something like this is implemented, when it's put in place, the city continually replaces. There's stickers for both the pedestrian paddle sign and for the pedestrian activated flashing beacons. The bike lanes are an interesting concept, right? So there are bike lanes, large city bike lanes, in which often a lane is removed, and then there are smaller bike lanes that can fit on a street. Sometimes a two-way street becomes a one-way and a bike lane is added. So use the bike lane with discretion. If every street had a bike lane, the city would lose its on-street parking, and a lot of your houses depend on on-street parking. So more bike lanes are part of the city's future, but help us to think carefully and to prioritize where they should go. You'll be working on the maps, you'll be placing the dots, and what we're going to do then is we're going to synthesize these dots. We have already something like 25 different maps from the 3 other exercises. We're going to be adding today's maps to that mix, and we're going to be creating a report which shows where people were placing dots like roundabouts or paddle signs. All of this is going online, and it's easy for you to see the result of your work. You have, every table has the 2 maps, like I was talking about. You have the downtown, and you also have one of the neighborhood areas. If you don't see the spot you want to work on, Oddity has made maps of the entire city. Just let us know. We'll go to the large key map, and we'll find the map for the area you want to work on. You're also going to be, at the end, we'll be working on the maps for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and then we'll ask anybody who would like to present what they have on their table to the larger group. Right, so when you look at these spots where there are pedestrian injuries and bicycle injuries, passenger injuries, you see that there are multiple different approaches. And this is where you need local knowledge. So if you're a traffic engineer and urban planner, and you know that this stretch, for instance, sees a lot of collisions, then the question is, what do we do? If it's a one-way street, that means cars are moving really fast. Should it be converted to 2 ways? 2-way traffic on a street slows down the traffic and makes things more safe. Should it stay one way, but should there be a bike lane? And then comes the difficult decision, if there is a bike lane, is there room for on-street parking or is there not? Or, for instance, is this a street where a speed table, a crossing, a raised crossing, a kind of hump that has the crosswalk on the top of it is appropriate? All of this stuff there's no real exact science for it. You have to have a knack. You have to kind of know the area. And that's why we rely on locals such as yourself. Any given intersection, Martin Luther King Boulevard, is a street that sees a lot of, sadly, pedestrian fatalities and cycling fatalities. Is it the no turn on red? Is the problem the street lighting? Do we need flashing beacons? Do we need the paddles? Only someone who walks that street quite regularly will know what the right approach is. That's my belief. And so that's why we're bringing these questions to you tonight. Now remember, we're going to try to focus on the areas where there's the most serious injuries and fatalities, but nevertheless, you know your street, you know where you work, so take a look at the injury and fatality maps, but also apply local knowledge to places that you know. Every intervention must be justified because it becomes a maintenance cost. So adding a sticker isn't enough. We won't add the sticker and then see the improvement immediately. There are professionals, there are standards. Does the state approve? Do they fit local guidelines? And then whatever we put in has to be maintained indefinitely. And so what I'm getting at is this is the first conversation, and it takes many more before these interventions are actually put in place. We have to remember that traffic services, Steve's department gets 100 traffic calming requests a year, and resources and time are limited. So it just means that we have to be patient. Like all things with government, nothing is immediate. But if you are persistent enough, good things do happen. We're going to go to the mapping. Just think about where are you a pedestrian, what's your walking route, Where do you go as a cyclist? What areas in the city do you see pedestrians or cyclists? What are the dangerous intersections? And in general, you know, how do we make Savannah safer? What's that big idea that brought you here tonight? We're very eager to learn. All of this information is available online. We're going to do those tallies. You're able to go to the city's website, and there's a link to the Vision Zero. And then also to stay in touch. To find out more, it's great if you're able to sign in at the front and give us an email, and then you're on the list. And as these events continue, as improvements are made, you'll be notified. All right, let's do that. Let's work now for an hour on the maps. Thanks again for coming. This is going to be fun.